Hey, Jason Tuschman here with Playing Offense on practice management and the business world of running a medical practice in today's world. Fortunate enough here to have on our first episode today Dr. Dennis Schimpf out of Charleston, South Carolina, and Sweetgrass Plastic Surgery. Dennis, thanks for coming on with me today. It's greatly appreciated.
Hey, Jason, great to see you. Thanks for having me.
So Dennis and I have been friends and basically business partners for almost 4 years now. Dennis has a multi-location, multi-provider practice in Charleston, South Carolina. Today's actually March 30th, 2020, so we're a good 10 days into the challenges of running a practice from a business standpoint due to COVID-19. And Dennis, opportunity to talk to you a little bit about your history first and how you got your practice to where it is, and then would love to jump right into how you're handling things at a personnel level and a management level with the practice.
Sure. Well, I started out in academic plastic surgery here in Charleston. I was there about 5 years. I went back to school and got an MBA degree, focusing on international business, and really liked the marketing aspect of it. And went ahead and opened a private practice in 2013. We've sort of grown to 4 locations. We have an independent spa, and we have between 30 and 40 employees. And, this area has grown really well with people relocating to the south to kind of retire. And so we've really benefited from that. And obviously the things that have happened recently have been a challenge.
So Dennis, great question from you from my standpoint is, when you look at what's happened the last week and, you're running a large business, you're running, 30, 40 employees, 3 locations. What was your first kind of line of communication to your management team and to your personnel as this started to really hit the media world and people started to talk about it within the office?
Well, I think what I've taken away from things like this is really just to take it easy initially and try to figure out what's really going on. I think so many things today with social media and the news, there's so many things that are being driven by not necessarily fact or somebody's opinion of a fact, and it's passed on as being sort of what's going on. And I think that's a challenge. And I don't think you can make decisions in a business based on that. And, I think that's one of the reasons, one of the things I watch is the market, because the market really has no emotion, if you will.
Yeah.
It's black and white. It factors in a ton of factors and spits out really an algorithmic answer. And, but it's a challenge, and I think, early on with your staff, you really want to have an open line of communication, and, we're going to get through it. Everybody's going to get through this. It's going to be a challenge, but, never too high, never too low type approach, trying to stay in the middle and just take it day by day. But really touch with your people is important.
Yeah, we talked a lot about, when this first started to happen, I was talking to my team about, look, we're going to focus on what we can control. You talk about pulling the emotion out of the market. I think it's the same when you're running a business and, especially a medical practice with everything they have going on and all the media hype out there, not hype, but the media out there. There's only certain things you can still only control what's in your environment. You can only control what's in your location. You can only control what's happening, hopefully with your team members. And if you consume all the media, you could end up ultimately making bad business decisions because it's moving at such a fast pace versus, as you say, pausing and taking a step back.
Yeah, you can't, if you're going to make a plan, it can't change hour by hour or with one interview of a politician or whatever. You can't do that. And I like what you said, you can only control what you can control. And so from a business standpoint, I think you have to sit down and really look at, cash flow is probably the most important thing right now that businesses are going to, sort of face. The folks who use your services are kind of in between a healthcare provider and a business in terms of we're not like a hospital, we're not a primary care physician. So we kind of ride in the middle of that, and I think it can be a little tricky. So I would recommend really looking at cash flow and trying to figure out, projecting at least 60 days, obviously 120 days of what are your needs going to be. And there's only 2 things you can do in that circumstance. You can either increase the amount of cash coming in or decrease the amount going out.
Yep.
Fortunately, right now we probably have or only have a lot of control over the later of the two for
Yeah.
the time being. It'll come back, and I think so. You got to look at what payments have to be made. What things can you defer? What kind of costs can you cut? And of course, that has to now tie to the stimulus bill and things that are going on from your employee standpoint, which does make it a little more confusing. But what I would recommend is identifying one or two people in your business with your bookkeeper or accountant, CPA, and just really getting in with them and sitting down and saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. Number one, we're going to figure out what do we need for the next 120 days,
Yep.
and what ways can we get to that.
So if I could pause you there for a second, Dennis, when you talk about, doing that research and you talk about, this dramatic change in priorities for your team, how have you tempoed the conversation or the communication patterns with them? Typically a business your size may be getting together with your team once a week, once a month, going over certain numbers. How have you changed that communication pattern given making these adjustments and priorities, given, diving into cash flow and managing expenses very quickly?
Well, I think it does become much more frequent. I think the first thing you should probably do is pull, some data and historically especially at the time of year, because our businesses are pretty cyclical. So looking back at the last 90 or 120 days probably isn't quite as good of an indication as to what would have happened the next 90 to 120 days, because this is a busy time of year for most cosmetic surgeons. So, I think you're going to see the effect. Unfortunately, the time of year that this hit is going to be even worse than had it hit at a slower time. But yeah, I think it needs to be on a regular basis. The biggest thing in this, I think, is that you can get scattered and too many things going on and being distracted. And I think you have to sit down and make a focused list and say, okay, number one, we're going to figure out what we need. Number two, we're going to see what resources are available, the SBAs and the businesses and loans that can be processed. And you're going to appoint somebody to do that and to finish the task. Because the thing you don't want to do is jump from thing to thing, next shiny object that seems like it's going to be the right answer.
Yeah.
And, a lot of these things just aren't even really understood by the people that are making the bills, or the bills aren't even really being actually dispersed yet as to what it's going to be like. So you just don't want to get caught up in that circle of up and down based on the next flash.
Yeah, I told my team, I worked with my team, and we've been talking to the doctors about, look, your short-term strategy is kind of a 3-day window, and your long-term strategy is a 2-week window right now. And we're going to make adjustments and decisions based on that, because that's going to help you work with your cash flow really quickly. And it's going to help you be able to think about the next set of changes you may need to make as things get better or worse, or new data comes to light. The other reason we got interested and really embraced this aggressive line of communication, which is always important, is the personnel changes, right? How this is impacting personnel, and I don't ever ever remember anything. And I've been through 97, I've been through 9/11, 2008 as being in business. But the immediate impact to both economic and personal lives of everybody around you is, almost immediately. So how have you looked at things with your personnel, your team, and adapting your business to be able to support them as they deal with these challenges in their lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're making a great point, and I don't know that something's happened in the way that this has before, in the fact that everybody was affected immediately at once, personal, private, business, no matter what business you're in, it was just basically shut off. And it's really an amazing situation, and one that's going to be a challenge, obviously, to turn back on. But I think there's some comfort in the fact that everyone's been affected, as crazy as that may sound, because I think, past economic times, 2008, the housing market drops all at once, the banks go under, GE can't borrow money, these things that just never could happen. But it was kind of trickled down one thing after another, and then it kind of snowballed. Whereas this was just all at once, basically turned off. So, what I worry about a little bit is the oversimplification of some of these stimulus ideas, in that, sure, they're looking at 2 weeks of salaries or 2 weeks of help, but obviously as days go on, we realize in 2 weeks it's not going to be over.
Yeah.
And So are we kicking the can down the road a little more? And is it going to be harder to go back and pass another stimulus bill or another after this?
Yeah,
So
apparently they're working on number 3 already right now.
right. Yeah. And you see how easy it was for them to do one. So, um,
Yeah.
each time the finger pointing is going to get worse and the debates are going to get more intense and people are going to get more desperate. So with me, we've tried to keep our employees going, continue to try to get any cash flow that we can to kick this down. In my view, I'm trying to kick it down the road as far as possible, because once you do go into that 2-week window, you only have 2 weeks right now, and you have to have something or some kind of plan at the end of that 2 weeks. And I don't really know of a great plan right now at the end of that.
Yeah. It's also, the positive of it is, in a situation like that, is you're also giving a lot of your team members the opportunity under a challenging time to create opportunities for themselves. So maybe they're spearheading certain parts of your cash flow management. Maybe they're spearheading certain parts of your patient communication that they wouldn't normally get that opportunity to do. And it raises the value of that team member and raises the opportunity for them and shows what they can really handle. And I think that's an amazing thing to do or to see. We've seen some really neat things happen here over the last 7 to 10 days on people picking up the ball and running really hard, and they didn't have to. And I think that's going to create opportunity for them in the long run, and for the organization, just like it would for your practice.
Yeah, I think it's great to see, folks do really rally. If you have the right set of people around you, and hopefully you do, and you've learned that over time, they're going to really probably impress you in circumstances like this. And, I think that's really important, is to try to find what you can do in this circumstance to make it positive in the long run. And, I think that's the second half of sort of what I was going to say with the cash flows, the immediate management right now in business. But you do want to start thinking about how you're going to come out of this and how you're going to position yourself ahead of everyone else. And, if you look in 2008, there were a lot of businesses that thrived afterwards because they planned for sort of coming out of it and, put resources into growing and taking advantage of the market that was available. There's a vacuum created in this circumstance. And,
Yep.
Vacuum's going to be up for grab in 60 days or whatever, so to speak. So, what are you going to do? How are you going to come out of it? How are you going to regenerate, sort of the business that you had, and hopefully improve it? And I think, this gives you that opportunity to look at it.
So that's a great segment into what I want to, ask you some questions on next is, you've got a pretty big marketing operation, obviously 3 locations. How many providers do you have again? How many doctors on staff?
We actually have 4 locations now, 3 sort of plastic surgery offices and 1 fully dedicated spa. We have a third. We've had 3 plastic surgeons. We had one of them leave. We're going to get a third one in July, and then we have a bunch of mid-level providers that do a bunch of injections.
So how have you looked at, you're obviously running a big marketing engine to feed the beast, if you will. When you look at your marketing and what you're doing in this environment, how have you changed it? How have you analyzed it as far as 2 things? Initial patient communication right now, helping them understand, just like you're trying to help your team understand where your thoughts are, where your concerns are, what you're doing to make sure that you're servicing your patient. And then secondly, the second part of that question would be to your point of, what are you starting to think about in your office or at night when the day's over, if it's over at all right now, about how you may alter your marketing to take advantage of that vacuum that's going to be created? Because I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Yeah, I think right now we're using social media to communicate with patients. We give out our cell phone numbers to post-op patients, so we want to make sure that anybody has a problem that they can be seen and taken care of. And obviously, we don't want them, unless they have to, run to a hospital or emergency room without absolutely needing it. And I think I think you want to look at what messages. There's no reason to advertise, something that has to be done in the office tomorrow, because most people can't do that. So you probably want to look now at branding, advertisements that build a brand.
Yep.
And you tie that to the social activities that are going on without making it look opportunistic. I think you want to be genuine in what the message is that you're sending.
Yeah.
And I think you want to use your messaging, advertising and messaging in that way to be informative, and educational and not salesmanish. I
No.
think right now is the time for that.
Yeah, you can't be selling now and
No.
building a brand right now. For so many of the doctors that have been sitting on the sideline and not embracing the reality of what social media, and I just call it marketing today. It's not even social media. It is what marketing is. It is you as an individual, as a provider, as a brand, more so than anything today. And hopefully doctors are going to embrace this, one, for what you're talking about, that they can actually help give comfort to their not only their patients, but actually to their team members, so that their team members can see them out there on social media playing offense against this situation that we're in, telling them, telling their audience, their patients, that they're secure, but also, letting that secondary message get to their team members that, hey, okay, my team's out there playing offense at a social media level, and that will create a brand for these guys and girls and ladies that understand, or that haven't embraced social media yet, and haven't taken it on because they either don't believe in it, they're uncomfortable with it, which many are. I'm uncomfortable with it. It's taken me a long time to get more comfortable with it, and I'm working on it every day, but it's a reality, and it's a great mechanism. It's an amazing, amazing channel for good doctors and good business owners to get out there and start to create that brand. And there isn't a better time right now from my perspective because of the opportunity to come out on that other side of this much stronger and much better.
Yeah, I think you want to educate, that you look at the topics, things that are in sort of vogue, or, it's as simple as watching some or hearing about some of these TV shows that have things to do with plastic surgery, housewives. Find a topic that they talked about on the show and just do a short video about it, but an educational one that what is the product. We saw that with face tightening. It was a treatment for tightening skin, and it was on one of the shows, and we did a couple things, and all of a sudden we had a ton of people that were interested in creating that educational piece is what people will value. And then I think, looking down the road, look at organizing some events in June or, maybe May or whatever that, get people together, get them back out, just get them back feeling like normal. I think before our businesses can really regrow, regenerate and grow again, normalcy is going to have to be achieved, and it's going to be hard. It's going to take some time.
So two quick questions for you. I know we're almost wrapping up here. I really appreciate your time. Two quick questions. 2 or 3 most important things as of today, and I know there's a lot more reading to be done. We were talking about this before we get started, but 2 or 3 most important things today that you think doctors should be looking at the stimulus package for to potentially help their business. And then I want to talk about Lupit for a second before we break off.
Sure. Yeah. I spent some time over the weekend reading it. I read some more today. I mean, I think, the employee part is the thing that you really have to focus on. I think you really should get out and apply for the SBA loans that they're putting out, or the employee forgiveness payment, reimbursement stuff. I don't think even they understand exactly how it's going to work quite yet. And I've talked to some friends who are in big banking industries, and they're being inundated with the information.
I think they're finding out today. I think they're finding out right now how the hell it's going to work.
Yep. They had conference calls this morning trying to work through it.
Yep.
There's some question, if you don't apply, will you get even if you don't take money from them, will you get benefits of the reimbursement or forgiveness? So I think there's a lot of unknown. I think you do have to kind of sit down, like I said, appoint one person and have them, bang through the headache of doing government paperwork. But I think that is very important, and you need to do that early on to be in that, at least in that. And
you have to get in the game. You have to at least try to get up to bat and see what can happen.
If you wait to try to figure out what's happening and what they're doing, and I think it's going to be too late for that. I'm trying to get a grasp on the employee. Our biggest issue, obviously, and most people that will be seeing this, payroll is a huge thing. So, figuring out how to navigate that with dramatic reduction in cash flow is really the challenge. And it's a little scary because on one hand, the government says you have to pay these folks for 2 weeks, but, a lot of businesses don't have that kind of cash on hand, or 4 weeks, or whatever it may end up being. And, trying to understand how that process is going to work, I think is not fully understood by anyone, to be honest with you, at this point.
Yeah, it's too big a problem to solve, but I think everybody's trying, so that's the most we can ask for at this point.
I think definitely get out and fill out the paperwork. I would talk to your local banks. I mean, the banks are being incentivized to obviously, be part of the stimulus. And actually, most of the stimulus money, my understanding, is going to be dispersed through private banks anyway,
Yep.
to some degree. So, getting in and doing that, most of the banks want to see your revenue stream and your last couple of years of, sort of revenue that you've generated. And they'll do loans up to like 1/6 of your sort of gross revenue for the previous year. The terms vary greatly on those. And,
Yeah, I was reading 2 to 2.5 months of payroll potentially covered, depending upon the size of the business and certain things, but it seemed to be a pretty aggressive package, and if they can get, that out to even half the people that need it, that's a much better thing than nothing.
Yep, and that's a separate thing beyond the sort of business alone. So I think that's very important. You made a good point. That the stimulus part of that 2.5 times your average monthly payroll cost, it's capped at $100,000 for people. So you can still count, if you have employees making more than that, you can count that first 100,000 into the repayment portion of it if you qualify for a repayment. So, but I think your CPAs, the bookkeepers, all of those folks are, really scattering around trying to understand this. And I think hopefully you have a CPA that you can talk with, because I think most people are going to need that sort of person to kind of explain exactly.
Yeah, if your CPA hasn't given you a summary yet, you probably have the wrong CPA working for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So one quick question, just to kind of tie this up. You've spent a lot of time the last couple of years researching and learning about online reputation management for doctors, and have worked on technology to help them, potentially get through this problem for any small business really better. Do you see any impact from what's happening, or any opportunities for online reputation management and the technology that's out there, given the current environment that we're in?
Yes, I think, what I've worked on the last 4 years is sort of trying to bring together, a verified review process with educational, useful reviews, and really educating the consumer. Because I think one of the things that all of us do is complain that patients read Google and read different things, but we don't do anything to help direct them into what hopefully they read and what's, trustworthy. So I think as you come out of this, and again, like I was saying, planning, trying to figure out how you're going to get this business going again, it's going to be through patients. And so how can you get more patients? And I think one of the ways is to educate them, to put reviews out that, are useful. And, one of the problems with the review world is everyone uses a review as sort of a precursor to how they feel their outcome is going to be. And, there's nothing more subjective than sort of medicine. And, one person's idea of what a good outcome may not be what another patient's is. And is the doctor, being bashed for that, right? I don't think so. I think it's not. It's a difficult world, and I think we've really worked hard at it. And I think the technology that we're bringing out now will hopefully help.
Awesome. Hey, Dennis, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Good luck to you and Sweetgrass, and I'll talk to you real soon.
Sounds good, Jason.
All right,
Thanks
take
for
care.
having me.